Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters Innovation. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram over at Ask Adam Torres. Keep up with my book releases, book tour schedule, signings, all that other good stuff. Always love to connect with you there. And as always, if you'd like to apply to become a co-author of one of my upcoming books, just head on over to the website, moneymatterstoptips.com, and click on Become an Author to apply. All right, so today I have Mathieu Cognac on the line, and he's Head of Strategy and Revenue Operations for Coursera, which is an online education platform. Mathieu, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm very excited to speak with you today.
So I'm definitely excited to get into the future of education and what you think that looks like. I mean, you have a unique vantage point being with working with Coursera as head of strategy for them. But before we get into that, let's get into what you're doing at Coursera. So first, tell us a little bit more about the company, please.
Yeah. So Coursera is an online education platform, like you said, and we are focusing on the higher education. And what we really envision is a world where anyone, anywhere can transform their life by accessing the world's best learning experience. And to do, we partner with universities and even some large companies to put all of their content, at least the content that they wish to provide online, and we make it accessible to millions of learners around the world. So for instance, we have more than 47 million people now taking classes on our platform. We've also started to provide services to companies and governments, and we have more than 2,000 companies also working with us to upskill all of their employees. So that's in a nutshell what we do.
I love it, and this ties into the show topic today because you have such a unique vantage point, just the scale and scope. It's one thing for me to ask the question, what does the future of education look like to somebody that has, 1,000 people or 500 people or something, which I'm not putting anybody down, of course, obviously, but based on the quantity and what you see, I mean, what do you think the future of this online higher education, not just a platform, but just landscape looks like?
Yeah, totally. So I think there's different types of trends. There's kind of like the future of learning, there's the future of credentials, and then there's the future of institutions. And what we've seen and what we believe in is that there's many trends in the future of learning that we anticipate will continue to expand, such as more and more of blended learning, where people take classes in person in a campus, but also complement their education online. We've also seen that a lot of learners want to learn at their own pace, in their own time, and their own place, and therefore we also believe that more and more this type of blended learning will allow for that. Then one of the big trends, as you can see, most of the industries right now as well, is the personalization, because we have more and more data from our learners, from the assessments that they take, from different countries, different backgrounds, and so forth. And the more and more data we get, and the more and more of artificial intelligence that we apply to this data, the more we start personalizing the curriculum of the learners. And therefore, we think it's going to be more and more of a trend in the learning overall and education sphere. A couple of other trends that we've seen and that work well as well is that like we've seen on campus, but more now expanded with online education, is that you have a really inclusive and project-based learning, where some of the learners before may not have been able to access because of impairments or because of issues, some education curriculum credentials, but now they can because of the technology. And also all of the learning that is happening today is done through the community as well, because we've seen that there are some tests, for instance, that can be ranked or at least assessed through peers, and that's sometimes very useful if it's not necessarily the last test of the trimester, but maybe like a weekly test that is happening where you can have more and more of like the peer type of assessment. And then the community-based learning is also super helpful, because when we provide these classes online, students often have tons of questions, and sometimes if you are in India and you are not necessarily in the same time zone as a professor in the US, you can still rely on your peers and on the community to answer a lot of questions you might have, for instance. And so these are some of the trends in terms of the future of learning. But then you also have the future of institutions. And what we strongly believe is that universities around the world will still remain, and teachers will still remain. And the only difference is that they will likely be more and more connected with one another. And that's actually what we at Coursera try to push, is really creating this network between universities and governments and also companies, and all of these institutions working together can really help if there are learners taking the after post high school wanting to enter the workforce. That we want to make sure that they learn the skills that will be useful for getting the job, or if they are in halfway through their career and they want to move to another place, or they want to learn something new, then that's also feasible through this online education. So these are some of the trends that we've seen. And maybe the last one is that in terms of credentials, I think more and more we're also seeing this evolution of the credentials, because there's a lot of platforms these days that provide online education, which is great. Actually, it's great to have competition, because the more competition, the more there's interest and appetite in upping our game when it comes to providing education. And there's more and more also of credentials and certifications that come from these online platforms. I at least think personally that there will be a change in the way we perceive credentials in the future.
I love it. And what's so funny to me is when you talk about like some of the concepts that you said in terms of newer education. So more customized learning, learn at your own pace. Things that you care about. What's funny to me is when I hear people say, I talk to quite a few people in education, I'm like, oh, so we're going back to the old mail order days, except we're doing it with technology. So what do you mean by that? I mean, pre-industrial, industrial revolution, when we were all being taught basically to, respond to a bell and go to a classroom so that we could one day work in factories. Before that, what were we? We were farmers. And what kind of courses did you take? Well, you had to mail away for it, right? And you only bought the things that you cared about or that you wanted to learn or that were going to enhance your skill set for what was useful, not just a structure of institution that says you have to do this because it's the law. So, it's so interesting to me that we're kind of, obviously when I say reverting, we're not sitting away for courses anymore. Now we're sitting on our computers, but it's the same concept though. It's customized, it's personalized to us, and it's, in my opinion, it's more meaningful education because it's the way we were meant to learn. Like, we want to learn things that are going to help us. We can trim out the fat and spend way more time on the things we care about and become experts there. And so I love it. I love what you're saying, and it makes me hopeful, not just for myself or any type of learning I want to do, but for, our next generation and their education and the next, rock stars in whatever their field is that they choose. So I love it. I love these updates, Mathieu.
And one thing that I would say as well is that sometimes people tend to believe that we've been talking about this future of education for a while. And I think that's true that as the internet started to grow in the late 90s and 2000s even more, people thought that education would be transformed in a minute. And of course, taken much longer.
Of course.
But I think we're really coming to a tipping point right now because Coursera has existed for now more than 8-9 years now. There's a lot of platforms as well providing education online that have existed for quite a few years. But the reality is that there are now degrees that you can get completely online that maybe 15 years ago you couldn't have. And every year now there's like a whole number of full degrees that are provided online, such as a Master of Data Science at University of Michigan. And when you get your completion and your degree, it doesn't say online, or it doesn't say blended online and on-site.
Totally different.
It's like a full degree. So, and we have like thousands and thousands of people who started to enroll in the past 2 years in these online degrees. So it's really happening now.
It's exciting. I love it. And I could talk to you about this all day, Mathieu, but we're about out of time. So that being said, if somebody's listening to this and they want to learn more about Coursera, or to connect, what's the best way for them to do that?
So the first pass would be maybe the website, Coursera.org, Coursera.org. And then they can reach out to me also on LinkedIn at the name that Mathieu Cognac that you just shared at the beginning. That's another way to connect with me personally.
Fantastic. Well, hey, Mathieu, really appreciate you coming on the show today and giving us more insight on the future of education from your vantage point, man. All great stuff there. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. Hope you got a lot of value out of this. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, leave me a review on the Apple iTunes Store, share this with your friends and family. I mean, do all those great things that we do to support our podcasters. And if you're listening to this on our YouTube channel, leave us some comments in the comment section. Love to hear your comments there over at the Mission Matters Innovation YouTube channel. And Mathieu, thanks again for coming on the show.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.